On this edition of the Just in Time podcast with Justin Kutcher.
Bruce Bochy is as old school gets.
You did call Mark McGwire's record-breaking home run.
Yeah. It was fun because I got to share it with my dad.
Favorite World Series you ever called?
01, after 9/11, President Bush throwing out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium. They started chanting Barry, Barry, Barry. And I said, well, they're used to chanting that name in this stadium. And he goes, Manilow? And I said, Manilow? I said, Bonds, not Barry Manilow.
The greatest sports moments happen in seconds, but the stories behind them are timeless. Dive into the mind of the icons who live those moments. No filters, just authentic conversations about the moments that define careers. I'm Justin Kutcher, and this is the Just in Time podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the Just in Time podcast with Justin Kutcher, joined now by a guy who is the voice of Major League Baseball and the NFL on Fox for generations, and now the current voice of Monday Night Football. He's also been my mentor for as long as I can remember, Joe Buck. Joe, thanks for joining me here. This is pretty special. It means a lot to me to have you here.
It means a lot to me to be here. I could not be more proud of all that you've done and all that you've become and how hard you work. And I can say I knew you when. You can say you knew me when. I can say I knew you when. You were about 10 when I met you. I was still in my, mid to late 20s or early 30s. But it's impressive to see all that you've done. And let's have some fun. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, man. It means more to me than you know to hear those words. And as a matter of fact, I can actually have a picture. I don't know if you could see right over there in the corner. Yep. The top picture is me and you, 2000 World Series, Subway Series, Yankees and Mets. That was my first time probably really getting a chance to be around you a lot. I worked a game with you guys earlier that year in Boston in September, you and Tim McCarver and Steve Horn. And Steve asked me, what am I doing for the playoffs? I'm like, school? I don't know. He's like, call me. So I called him, and next thing you know, I'm working the Subway Series with you guys.
Well, you should know that that's a badge of honor, because if you pass Steve's test as I don't even know what they call, like a BA or like a broadcast associate, a runner, whatever the politically correct term is, then that means you're doing something right. And I think, it applies to any career or any choice that anybody makes in life or what they want to do for a living. I think when you show up and you're bright-eyed and you're willing to work and you're not reactionary, you're somebody that's, I think, jumping ahead and kind of anticipating what's to come and what's going to be needed, people pay attention to that. I think now, probably in 2025, even more than in the year 2000. I could be wrong, but I think I'm right, because if you're young and you're willing to work, and you show up and you have a smile on your face, and it's not like you're dragging to go do something, pretty good chance that people are going to want to keep you around. And, that was an easy choice by Steve, and I'm glad he did it.
Yeah, that makes two of us. And I love the hat that you're wearing, by the way. That is a fantastic hat. The Rawlings, I mean, that was my glove of choice my whole life. The Pro 1000 BC was my go-to. But I love the fact that you have that on, because I feel like baseball, that's your roots. That was my first love. Was it your first love?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I spent so much time at Busch Stadium and on the road with my dad. I was really lucky that I came along at a time in my dad's life when he had 6 kids, and then I showed up with a new wife to be, and you can do math or whatever you want to do and figure all that out for yourselves. But I think that when I showed up, it also coincided with a time when his career really took off, and that was more happenstance than anything. It was when Harry Carey was let go by the Cardinals, and my dad, who had been in St. Louis since the middle 50s, kind of ascended to the number 1 spot. And, so I was in a position where he wanted me around, and I was a good boy. I was a good little kid. I didn't really get in trouble. I knew that if my dad was sitting in this seat and was talking as seriously or as deep or as loudly as I'm talking right now, if I wanted to be in there with him, I had to be quiet, and I couldn't be knocking stuff over, and I couldn't wander over and talk to him. I had to sit there and kind of shut up. And, that that was the time I spent with him because he was gone a lot. He was on the road a ton. He and I had a great relationship. My mom kind of did all the dirty work, and then my dad showed up for the fun times. But he used to bring me down to the ballpark. He could trust me to run around Busch Stadium into the nooks and crannies and down by the clubhouse and down beyond the clubhouse where there was a racquetball court and all the players' suitcases and loading docks. And that's just how I grew up, running around with Ted Simmons' son, John, and he and I would play stickball, and my dad would do the game, and then I'd find him before the end of the game, and we would drive out just night after night after night. And then, like I said, and I'll stop droning on, but I went on road trip after road trip with him, and I'm pretty sure I was in every National League city before I was 12.
Holy cow.
Which, then just seemed normal, and now seems crazy that, he was willing to kind of put me in his pocket and let me experience life as a big league broadcaster. So I was really lucky. He was a great dad. We had a lot of fun. We were more friends than father son, and I was smart enough to take advantage of it and really pay attention.
Do you remember the first game, or what is the first game that you remember going to with your dad?
I don't know. Well, I know the first game I was probably, I don't have my memory sucks. My sister remembers everything, remembers what she was wearing, remembers what my mom was wearing, everything that was said, all stores that have come and gone, all commercials that have come and gone. Everything's like a blur to me. So that's a problem, but we'll deal with that at a later date. But
Yes.
I think for me, the earliest game I can remember is when I was a little boy, and I must have been, 5, 6 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood. And in the old Busch Stadium, which was the second version of Busch Stadium, I was up on the top level of the broadcast booth. My dad and Mike Shannon and Bob Starr were down on the bottom level broadcasting the game. And I got excited and knocked over a Coca-Cola that was in a cup, and it splashed down all over them while they were doing the game. And they got up. They thought somebody ran in there and just threw something at them. And they got up and turned around and looked like they were ready to fight. And it was just me in the back of the booth, red-faced, embarrassed. And that was kind of that is maybe my earliest memory of being a little boy. And, of course, it's tied right into a baseball broadcast booth and my dad and all the other stuff that goes with it. But, yeah, that's – I don't know, maybe 6, 7.
Yeah.
I'm not at 5. I don't think I was drinking a Coke at 5, but maybe I was. It would explain a lot.
Hey, life on the road, with a big league team, you probably were drinking a Coke at 5, 6 years old.
Oh, that was the light stuff. That was just in the evening. It was the heavy stuff would come later.
So do you remember why you were excited? Was it a hit by a certain player?
I was probably just being spastic. I mean, like a little kid, but I don't know that it was game related. I think it was more flailing around and not paying attention. And maybe that was one of the early times. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to be good and I'm going to get an opportunity to be in this booth and travel around my dad, I can't do stuff like this. I think I was probably older than my age, the majority of my life, which I think allowed me to do the big leagues at 21 years old and allowed me to audition and get the job at Fox at 24. And then my first season, I was 25 and kind of faked my way through football until I kind of understood it better. But I think kind of a maturity that I had was developed from my dad traveling so much and my mom relying on me to kind of be whatever the man of the house means anymore with my little sister, and just kind of be the steadying influence, which sounds absurd, but it is true. She would tell you that if she were sitting on here. It was I was a very serious kid, and I was not a little dingbat, and I was I think always deathly afraid in a small town of embarrassing my father. And I wasn't drinking much as a teenager, high school kid. I wasn't getting arrested. I just knew that if I did, it would be headlines about me and the group, and then my dad and what a failure he was as a father or whatever. And I just tried to really be smart and stay away from that stuff. So I'm sure I dodged a few bullets along the way, but I was a good kid. And I think I just didn't want to waste the time that I had with my dad when he was back home being grounded or being disciplined or whatever I had to be. I wanted to be able to go down to Busch Stadium with him and enjoy the night. That it was just the best way to grow up.
What's really cool about that is I think a lot about my life and why things happen. And I've come to the point in my life where I figured out that things happen for a reason. And for you, the fact that you were mature beyond your years helped you when you got that national job with Fox at 24. I was going to ask, when you're calling the World Series at 25, 26 years old, how do you get past that mental hurdle of, are people going to think I'm too young to be doing this? Like, are they going to take me seriously? How do
I
you?
think a big, uh, I guess, advantage, I guess a big teammate I had in that was Tim.
Mhm.
You know, for as much as Tim and I would try to needle each other and have fun and drive each other nuts, or I would do stuff to him that would make him mad intentionally because I wanted to lighten him up and make him laugh. I do think that having a security blanket like Tim, who had seen it all, done it all, broadcast it all, was a great advantage to me. And then I think his acceptance of me as a voice of somebody who was worthy of an opinion on a stage like that is something that maybe at the time I took more for granted than I should have. Now, looking back at it, I don't know that if I was paired with a, you know, let's say that first year I was 26,
Mhm.
uh, and then 27 by the time the playoffs rolled around. I don't know how I would have taken it. I would like to think that I would want to make the most of it and you know, really take advantage of somebody's youth and talk about some of the references they have that I couldn't really have. But it didn't have to be that way. And Tim accepted me. And I think when as that season went on and he knew that I could handle it and I had an opinion, a baseball opinion that I learned as much from my dad as I did Mike Shannon, who was his longtime broadcast partner here in St. Louis, and kind of knowing or understanding some of the ins and outs of the game. I think that kind of nod from him went a really long way to where nobody's really thinking of somebody as a 27-year-old. You can either do it or you can't. So I, you know, I'm sure it's probably why I see a psychologist that I talk about, you know, having an imposter syndrome and always still to this day feeling like somebody's going to just go, oh my God, this is Jack Buck's son. He stinks. There's only one reason why he's here. It's because he had a famous father. And of course that was running through my head that first World Series in the Bronx. And I was trying to do two things. I was getting, you know, game one rolled around and it was kind of a stormy day. And I was so hyped up to do the World Series that night that I intentionally tried to go slow when I got to the ballpark and just be very chill when I was putting the lineups into my notebook and my scorecard and everything. And then all of a sudden I was like, my God, I've only got like 30 minutes here. I got to hurry. And then it was a race. And then the rain started coming down and game one got rained out. And so all the prep and all the nerves and everything else, I got to kind of put a pin in it and go back to the hotel, get up the next day, come to the ballpark. All my stuff is done now. And I could just kind of exhale and wait for the game to start. And it was such a blessing for me personally that I didn't feel rushed going into that first game and I could just kind of do what I had always done. But as now a 56-year-old man, knowing, you know, what it's like to be 29, 26, that's the ages of my daughters, thinking they're in control of a World Series and I'm on the couch watching it, I would be sucking my thumb and just scared to death if one of my kids were doing it. So I don't know. You just kind of fake it till you make it and do it and get through it. And when I go back and listen to those games, I'm more impressed about how I handled all that then than anything I do today. So I'm, you know, it's a long, convoluted answer, Justin. It's kind of the crux of my life and where I feel like I fit in the landscape of broadcasters. But I wouldn't switch the way I've done it or what I've done with anybody else.
There's a lot to kind of peel apart there. First, I want to talk about your daughters who are 29 and 26. That's really scary for me to think about because I remember in 2006 in the NLCS. It was Cardinals against the Mets, and we're in St. Louis, and your you had your daughters come to the booth, and in St. Louis, kind of like what you were mentioning, you had the broadcast table down here and the booth was up here, and you're getting ready to rehearse the open. And as you're rehearsing the open, you're like, and now welcome to the broadcast booth, Joe Buck alongside Tim McCarver. And right by the camera, your youngest daughter was doing your open. And because of that, you saw it out of the corner of your eye and you messed up. And you're like, you got me, you little jerk. And I just think about that. And I was like, oh, that was so cool. And now she's 26.
Yeah, I know. Time flies. And believe me, the older you get, the more it flies, which is really sad and kind of the way life works. If you're lucky enough, we could go into that. But I always wanted to make them feel like I felt, which was my booth is their booth. Now, I don't know that Tim loved that, but Troy and I have always done that because our girls are basically the same ages and we've watched them grow up. I've watched his two girls. He's watched my two girls grow up, and now he's watching my two boys grow up. Time moves on. It goes fast. And all that stuff, though, is really good to have for me because it's reality. And it's like, okay, what I'm about to do is not the most serious thing in the world. An NLCS game, there's a bigger world out there than what's happening in this booth and in this ballpark right now. And when you get a reminder of that and you see somebody that you love that much, it's easy to kind of smile, laugh, and it takes some of the pressure off. So I always love diversions like that.
It's funny because in the 2000 World Series, I worked with you guys in September, and then I was doing like official stats or being a runner for that World Series. And it was Game 3 at Shea Stadium. And I've told this story to a bunch of people, but they were playing Eminem on the loudspeaker and they were blasting it. And I look over at you and I see you rapping, like singing every word to the song. And it's before Game 3. And I'm like, how can you be this calm? And I just said to you, and again, I'm like a 20-year-old kid. I'm nervous. And I was like, what are you doing? You're like, what? I'm Slim Shady. And I was like, that is awesome. And again, I've always put you up on this pedestal. And it's crazy to me that you were like 31 years old. And now I realize, like, yeah, at 31, you're definitely rapping to Eminem. You're having fun and this and that. And
I still do that stuff. I still do that stuff. I think that's really important. And I am certain that there are members on our crew when my mic is open to our crew before it's on the air, and the camera people, the graphics people, the tape people, whatever, they can all hear me. I just screw around a little bit just to kind of lighten the mood and remind everybody as best I can that we're there to have fun first and foremost. Do your job and have fun. And I'm sure there's some people on there that roll their eyes and are like, oh my God, he's doing whatever again, or, singing some dumb song or whatever it is. But I just find, like when we had our first broadcast with golf on Fox, all the USGA stuff, year 2. And now we have a new analyst, it's Paul Azinger, and Curtis Strange is in the booth. Where I said, everybody meet in the booth before we go on. And then I had a runner go get a 6-pack of beer. And I said, no, we're not going to chug it, but we're just going to do a toast to having a great season and having a great U.S. Open. And I think that was on the Wednesday before, or maybe it was on the Thursday, the first day of it. And it was just a toast, like, let's just please have fun. We've been taking our lumps at Fox Golf, and I'm a hell of a lot more proud of it than really anything, because we started it up from ground zero and I knew nothing about what the hell I was doing. But let's just as a group enjoy this and not take this so seriously. And I always do that. I always try to make Tim laugh. When he and I were together, I always try to make Troy laugh, Smoltz, all those guys. It's important to me to see their teeth before we go on the air with laughter, because I think it's the number one thing to having a good broadcast.
I agree. And that's awesome that you guys had the beer. I really hope that somebody actually chugged it before they began the broadcast. That would make it even more.
It probably would have made it more interesting and better, although it's not like you're going to get hammered from that. And anytime I talk about this stuff, somebody clips it and puts it on awful announcing, and then it's like, okay, but it was all that stuff has always been symbolic. It's not, it's like a trigger in my head. It's like, I don't smoke. I never smoked anything in my life.
You and me both.
But on a golf course, if I want to relax, I will light a cigar every once in a while, maybe twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. If I'm nervous, like if I'm out in Tahoe, I may do it or whatever, just as a trigger to my mind to relax. That's it. And it's not, I'm not jonesing for it. It's almost like I'm forcing myself to do it as like kind of let's just
have fun,
be real here. Let's just chill. And that's always when I'm at my best. I think when, you do a Super Bowl and you've got 2 weeks to prepare and you've got so many notes and so much stuff, it's so overwhelming that you forget the most important stuff. You forget the most important stats. You forget the main storylines of a season. You forget all that because you're so down in the weeds with all this stuff that it just becomes paralyzing. And I think the more you can kind of pull back from that, having done all the work, that's the first thing. I'm not saying you have to do the work, but then you can't be so, down winding your way through all these notes that you miss the most important stuff, which is on the field and has never been seen before. So that's just kind of all that stuff is the same. And it's whether it's Trudy walking in the booth or it's everybody do a toast, let's have some fun. I think that stuff's vital to what we do.
Do you remember Barry Bonds' only trip ever to Yankee Stadium? It was 2000. It was 2002, and I was doing stats for you because Steve Horn had vertigo. So I was right next to you in the booth, and we're standing up before the game, and you knew that I wanted to be a broadcaster. And you said to me, take this for what it's worth. It's a minute before we go on the air, and I've not read a single page of these. And they were the game notes.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at you like, what? And you go, call the game. The game is the most important thing that you can talk about.
I never read the game notes. I don't read the release. I read all the clips. I read all the articles. I do all the face-to-face. I do all the Zoom calls. I do all that stuff. The notes like, hey, he's 5 for his last 18 is just filler. To me, that's crap. Like, that doesn't say anything. Now, if he's 18 for his last 18, I'm going to be aware of it because it's in everything that I've read. But if it's just some random stat, you're just filling air. And I think in today's broadcast, the sound is so good that there is no such thing anymore as dead air. If I'm doing a game at, let's say, Monday Night Football now, and I don't talk for a play, it might be pretty interesting to hear the signals being called from the line of scrimmage, to hear the actual pads hitting, to hear a whistle a little bit louder than you otherwise might if I'm talking over the top of it. I mean, on and on and on. I feel like I'm going to get the main strokes of it much more so than just some raw stat, which is what those notes tend to be. Excuse me. And then most teams, especially in baseball, but even in football, it's kind of all just generated from the house, and it's almost like it's all weird the best and these guys are perfect, and that's not reality. So I would rather I'd rather fill that time. There's only a certain amount of time that you have during an at-bat, and I would much rather hear Tim or Smoltz or Aikman during a play or whatever fill that little bit of real estate and time with something that's current and something that is applicable to what's happening right now with what they see with their eyes than me doing he's 5 for his last 18. I don't care. And I don't care to hear that. I care. I mean, it puts somebody into a frame, I guess, but if I'm going to say it on the air, it's got to be kind of important, I think. Otherwise, leaving it open and letting it breathe a little bit, to me, is better than saying he's 5 for his last 18.
Is that something you picked up from being around your dad all those years?
Yeah, I don't think he ever read any game notes. He didn't even write in his lineups. And
What?
yeah, I mean, he had the intern up there write down the lineups. It was stolen bases outside the box on the lineup slots. It was average, home runs, RBIs. That's it. Go do the game. And there's plenty of stuff to talk about. The weather, the size of the crowd, the road trip coming up, the state of the bullpen, who the Cardinals called up, where the kid's from, talk about sponsors and talk about Bud Light Night coming up at Busch Stadium, or there's a billion things you can talk about. Doing random stats, it's just not, it wasn't his thing. It wasn't Harry Carey's thing. It wasn't Bob Prince's thing. It was none of those guys. They were not pouring over OPS plus. That is the biggest crutch I've ever heard. If you can find me 5 people walking the street, now there's going to be people that want that stuff, and it's great. It's a way to quantify, how a guy's playing. But to the general population, if you can tell me what a great OPS plus is, then you're a hell of a lot more interested in this than I am. And that's me at the height of doing a World Series. I don't, it's not my thing. So I am now the dinosaur. I am now the guy that goes, in what world is somebody hitting 203 a good ball player? Tell me he is. Tell me that a 203 average, but he's got a really high whatever WAR. I don't know. That's why it's moved past me, and that's all good, and I tip my cap, but I'd rather use my eyes and kind of what I've learned over the years, see if a guy's getting a good swing or not, if the guy's launching or making good contact. And in my world, a guy hitting 203 sucks. That's pretty simple.
You're preaching to the choir right now. I guess that's why I learned so much, and I gravitated towards you for all those years in listening to you during the playoffs, during the World Series, all that stuff. I just wonder, what would your dad or Harry Carey think of OPS and OPS plus and WAR?
I don't. It's not how they looked at the game, and I think it's a great tool. It for sure is. But when you see, somebody at The Athletic just put a poll out from players like best manager, it's like Bruce Bochy, 2, Terry Francona. And then Bruce Bochy is as old school gets.
Yep.
And is not relying on front office moves to tell him, especially during October. Of all the managers I watched and covered, and I covered him a ton in the playoffs, watch a guy manage a bullpen. Nobody had a better feel, and it's feel as much as it is stats. It is feel, and I think he had an unbelievable. He was so underrated as the manager of the San Francisco Giants, and he was very honest. And so when we went in before Game 7 of 2014 in Kansas City, and Madison Bumgarner's pitched over 50 innings in that postseason, and it just started, I don't know, the day before or, whatever, 2 days before. And you go, hey, what do you think? But is he available? Oh yeah, he's available. I'm like, well, and whoever I was doing it with, it was
that Verducci and
that was
Harold
Verducci
Reynolds?
and Harold. And it's like, man, I'd love to get 2 innings out of him. And there he is pitching 5. And I'm sure every other analytic human being would go, now, are you kidding me? This guy with the innings and but he's getting outs, and hitters tell you if a guy's effective, and you're willing to flush that to go to somebody else who just may not have it that night. That's the way humans are wired. I don't care who it is. Dennis Eckersley gave up a home run to Kirk Gibson in Game 1 of the 1988 World Series, and Gibson couldn't walk, let alone run. And, that's just, these are human beings. And he hung a pitch, and Gibson flipped it into the pavilion in right field. That's the way sports works in my mind.
Yep.
So to just go, oh, well, this is how it is by the book. And Joe Madden did it in 2016 when the Cubs won it. He did everything he told us he wouldn't do.
I was just going to ask you. I was going to say, like, that is the exact opposite of Joe Madden in Game 7 in 2016. And you and Smoltz were right on it. I mean, to pull his starting pitcher, who was absolutely, yes, who is dealing, to go to Lester, I was sitting here going, he just cost the Cubs the World Series.
Well, he told us he wouldn't do it. He said, I will not make a pitching change mid-inning because it will force a catching change, which it did. That ended up working out. I think Ross, did he homer in that game or Contreras, however it went.
Ross had to come in, yeah.
The point was pressure does some crazy stuff to people. And it was, taking him out when he took him out, bringing in Lester of all the guys, switching catchers because of that, using Chapman again in the 8th inning and Rajai Davis hits a game-tying home run. It was like one thing after another that he said before the game. And I've never really talked to him about it. And I love Joe. Yep. And Joe was so open and honest with us. I just want to go, all right, it's just you and me here. You did like 4 things you told us you were not going to do 2 hours before you did them in Game 7 of the World Series, and just see what he says. But yeah, I mean, you're always going to the next person who, again, may not have it that day. We had it in the World Series with Tampa Bay and Kevin Cash, who I love, and he takes out Snell, who's dealing against the Dodgers, and then back to the bullpen, which is at the end of an October, and you're banking on everybody being perfect and doing what they always do. And Mookie Betts is coming up, and the big right-hander comes in, and whack, he rips one into the corner, and it unfolded from there. And I'm not saying that's always, it works out too. I'm not saying it doesn't ever work, but you've got to use your eyes too. And I think sometimes, when you're on your couch and your eyes are telling you, why is this pitching change being made here? Sometimes that pitching change was made at 2:00 in the afternoon before the game even started. And that's the stuff that gets, at least in my book, my opinion, hard to defend.
Yeah. Gosh, we can go off on a whole nother tangent right there, because there are so many examples that drive me crazy as a baseball fan and as a baseball person, to see how the game has changed and how people value certain things. And going back to that 2016 series, he threw Andrew Miller early for Cleveland, threw Andrew Miller a lot early in Game 1, and that was Francona. Yeah. And I'm like, the more you see the reliever, the advantage goes to the hitter, and then Miller tired out as the series went on.
I think sometimes they get a guy that, Joe Torre, for as great as Joe Torre was, had about 3 guys that he trusted in his bullpen any given October. And it was like Jeff Nelson, Mike Stanton, Mariano Rivera. Anybody else pitches, he's freaking out. But those 3 guys, if he could get them in, he was going to wear them out. And Andrew Miller that season was unhittable for the most part. And, those guys tend to ride the guys that they trust. I mean, the list gets very short in October of players that are to be trusted with the baseball. But again, I mean, the game is still a part of my DNA. This all started with you talking to me about my first love. It is my first love. Doing baseball play-by-play is, I think, the great test. Doing it on the radio is the biggest test, I think, of making something interesting. Shows that you can show personality. I think listeners have a certain fondness for the ones that have been there forever and have almost a familial tie with those people. They did with my dad, who did it for 50 years in one spot. It's special. And I think it touches every note. You want to get excited on a game-winning home run? Everybody can yell and scream, but can you make it exciting when it's a 4-hitter and nothing's really going on, and you can kind of go back and forth with your partner? That's I think where you really find out who's good at doing baseball, which I think is the toughest test out there, in my opinion.
What was the first game that you called with your dad?
He let me do one when I was 16. I did an inning. He let me do one when I was 18. He and Mike Shannon got up and walked out of the booth when I didn't want to do it, and the inning started, and I had to run down there and do it. But he wasn't trying to embarrass me. I would do the games into a tape recorder, in Busch Stadium. That was at a time in the early 80s when, TV games, if you weren't on the game of the week, you weren't going to see it unless you were a Braves fan or Cubs fan, and you were watching Superstation baseball with WGN or TBS, and so the TV booth was open all the time, and if not that, then the one down next to it. So I'd just get a tape recorder, I'd get all the game notes, I'd get my score sheet, and I was 13, 14, 15 years old, just doing the game into the tape recorder, pop it out, listen to it with my dad on the way home, and he would tell me different things to work on, and it was never, you shouldn't have called that home run that way or whatever. It was more about diction, about vocabulary, about changing things up. Not every ground ball to short is a bouncer to short. If you get into that trap, you keep saying the same thing over and over again. It's why you got to listen to your own stuff, which is hard to do sometimes. But yeah, it was more kind of the nuances of broadcasting and not necessarily the mechanics of calling like a double into the gap or something like that. And so I was getting the repetition of calling double plays and, line drive outs and, a shot into the corner and describing how far the guy and how fast the guy was running and all that stuff. And that was all good. And that just takes repetition. And then it was, kind of the more subtle things about setting up the next pitch and, reminding of the score because it's not on your screen, you're doing radio, all that stuff that as a kid, you got to learn. You got to have all these little bells that go off in your head. Like I haven't said the score now in the last 3 minutes. And if somebody tunes it in, they have no idea what's going on. You got to be on that. So that's just the stuff I talk about that I was so lucky to get to do with a master's class in a Lincoln town car on the way home with him driving, drinking a beer while he was driving, and me in the front seat, probably before I should have been now by today's standards of car seats and weight.
So you got to see things that broadcasters back then did. What would be in their cup when they were broadcasting?
I could pass any lie detector. I could pass any inquiry. Everybody in St. Louis, which is where I am and where I grew up, everybody is certain that Mike Shannon was drunk during the game or Harry Carey was drunk during the game. I never one time, maybe once, like if the game was in the 13th inning and they were getting tired or whatever, there was a beer tap in the Busch Stadium media lunchroom. I mean, it was owned by Anheuser-Busch.
Right.
Of course there was. And it was the freshest, coldest beer I came to learn when I became of age. But they just never drank. They never drank in the game. My dad has joked, and I believe him, that when he did the Ice Bowl in Green Bay, he put something in his coffee to try to warm up when it was minus 30 or whatever, and he's just wearing like an overcoat. But people were convinced Mike was drinking, and he did not. And if he did, I would say it because it adds to the myth and the lore of Mike Shannon. He just said stuff that sometimes didn't make a lot of sense, but in his mind, or if you knew him, it made sense. But to the average listener, it made no sense. Like, and then there were times where he said stuff that just was bizarre. Like we were doing a game in Houston one time, and Thomas Howard was a Cardinal, and he was a runner at first base, and the Astros were holding him on at first base, and the Cardinals were down by 2 in the 9th inning. And he's like, Joe, I don't know why the heck the Astros are holding the runner, Thomas Howard, at first base. He hasn't stolen a base since. And then when there's that pause, I knew he was in trouble. And he's like, he hasn't stolen a base since, the Jupiter invasion. And he's like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, yeah, he took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say the same thing. It makes absolutely no sense. But the point is, you're up by 2. The runner first doesn't mean anything. There's 2 outs. Play a better defense. Cover more ground. Get behind the runner. Like, that's the stuff that I learned as a kid. That you don't just hold against a runner because that's what you're supposed to do when you're the first baseman and there's a guy on. There's times when that doesn't mean anything. Play a better, wider defense and have more range, whatever. But, he was not drinking, may have been tired, but was not drinking. I'm here to pass every test I can on that.
Well, that's good to know, because it is what people say about Harry Carey and those guys and everything.
I can't speak to Harry.
Yeah.
I can only speak to Jack Buck and Mike Shannon. Maybe twice in 30 years did I see them ever do anything like that. And it was at the end of a long night when they were like, oh my God, will this thing ever end, on a Tuesday night at Busch Stadium against the Pirates or something.
What was it like actually calling a game with your dad?
It was fun. I was smart enough to know not to take it for granted. I was smart enough to really take it all in. When it happened, I didn't know what to call him.
I was going to ask, do you call him Dad or do you call him Jack?
I never Dad. That just seems wrong. So even though, a majority of people obviously knew that I was Jack Buck's kid and whatever, so I just wouldn't say anything. There's only one other person. If I was asking a question, I was asking him. So, what do you think of, or, hey, how about the way blank? I wasn't like, hey, Jack, how about the way, or hey, Dad, how about, maybe it would have been cuter to some degree if I had said Dad. I think if I was going back, I probably would say Dad more than I ever did. Maybe I said it once or twice. But he kept me on the guardrails. He was very aware of broadcasters, and Harry was the opposite. And I think that's kind of where he learned it, or it hit him wrong, when announcers were critical of players or critical of umpires. If an umpire was having what I thought was a bad night with the strike zone or something, and I kept going there, and another strike call on the outside corner, I'd look over at him, and he'd kind of give me a look out of the corner of my eye, like that, out of his eye, like, that's enough, like, stop. And that was kind of the guidance that he would give me. Beyond that, he just kind of let me find my own way, which I'm really thankful for. It was never like helicopter parenting announcing. He was there to kind of let me find my own way. Nobody was there holding his hand when he learned when he was young, and he wasn't going to do it for me. And the beauty of him, like Mike Morgan, Cardinals pitcher, long time, more of a Cubs pitcher, but he was with the Cardinals pitching a no-hitter. And believe it or not, it was toward the end of his career. And we got to the ninth inning, and that was usually my dad's inning. Obviously, he would do the ninth, and then I'd go down, or Mike would go down, but pretty much I would go down and do the start of the game interview. And he's like, stay up here. He's like, have you ever called a no-hitter? I'm like, no, I've never called a no-hitter. He's like, well, you're doing it. And of course he gave it up and like won out in the ninth inning or something. But he wanted to share that stuff. And he did that for Mike too. He called no-hitters. He called Lou Brock, setting the single season stolen base record. He'd call the Gibson home run. He's done all that stuff. So, I mean, it was appreciated, but that was, kind of his way of taking care of me, letting me try to get in the record books as the guy who called Mike Morgan's only no-hitter of his career, but it wasn't to be that night.
Wow. So you did call Mark McGwire's record-breaking home run.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking back, it was 1998. Again, you're young. What was that experience like for you?
It was fun because I got to share it with my dad. And when I called that home run, a few things. I was doing it for Fox. Fox had moved, which is a big Herculean task by Ed Goren and David Hill, to have Fox Entertainment blow off all of their, I think it was a Tuesday night, blow off all of their Tuesday programming, primetime programming, to cover a live baseball game with the idea that he might hit a game or a record-setting home run. But they did, and he did. And in the booth to my left was my dad and Mike. Mike called it because they were just trading off innings.
Yep.
And I got to do it on TV. So to go through that season with my dad and Mike was really good friends with Roger Maris, really good friends with the Maris family. My dad loved Roger and the Roger Maris family. And so there was a direct tie to the record that Mark was breaking, that he set with the Yankees in 1961. So there was a lot of symmetry there. And then when he called that, I mean, I was close with Mark, really close.
Yeah.
He and I were buddies, and I got a lot of crap after that game because when he came up to do the interview, he hugged me, I hugged him, whatever. I was just happy for him, and it was like kind of crossing a barrier of journalist to, all of a sudden I was Ahmad Rashad hugging Michael Jordan or, whatever. But I was proud of him. He was hugging all the Cubs on his way around the bases, and he had one left for me. And the cool thing was that before that game, I sat down with he and Sosa and did an interview with them about 4:00, nervous out of my mind to sit there with them with that kind of tension that was in the air because Sosa was right on his heels anyway. And so we're talking about all that. And then we get done with the interview and I'm going to go up and call the game and he's going to go get ready. And it was nice of them to do it. And as we're all getting up, he's like leaned into me. He's like, "You better be ready, man. I'm hitting it tonight." I was like, damn, okay. So I go up there and he rockets that ball about 1 inch fair and about 2 inches over the wall down into the left field corner. And the beauty of it for me was I was one booth over, so I had an even better look at it more down the line than Mike did, who was calling it more directly behind home plate. It's hard to see in that corner. And you're kind of going off the crowd reaction more than anything. I could see the ball go, and I was zeroed in like never before because you cannot make a mistake and call that his 60-second home run, and it's not. I mean, he'd be laughed out of the business. So a lot of things. I mean, and then the other part of it is, not planning or not being able to get my eyes down to the script thing that I had written about what that home run meant and all that. I had to keep my eyes up to make sure the ball was gone. And because my eyes were up, I saw him leap over first base, miss the bag because he was watching the ball too and was excited. So it was a good lesson to learn that you're going to find the right words in the moment, even in the biggest moments, because that's what you do, and not worrying about that and just being honest to the moment like you would any other time.
I've always wondered this about you. You never had a scripted home run call. And does it all go back to that you want to just be in the moment?
I think that as time went on, yeah, I think that was a good reminder. I think that year in '98, when he said it, I was asked about it constantly by people who cared to ask me about it. Other media members, the critic in St. Louis, the critic in the USA Today, whatever. Like, what are you going to say if he hits the home run? And it's like, I have no idea what I'm going to say from the first pitch to the last. I don't know, whatever comes out of my mouth. And I then the more people ask you, the more you start going, man, should I start thinking about this? Because I'm not. And then I took the bait of, that was the only time where I wrote something down in my scorebook of what it was going to be. And it was fine. It was probably corny, but it was not over the top at all. It was just, McGwire rounds the bases and goes into the history books or something along those lines. And I feel like not every home run's the same. I mean, some are line drive rockets, some are moonshots, some are, the pesky pole in right field at Fenway. Some don't look like home runs and then they are, and some are wind blown and some are hammered, and then you go into your home run call and it hits the middle of the wall, and then I always felt like it felt like you were trying to cram the home run into your call instead of calling what you see. So I didn't have kind of that. I think if I settled in on anything, it was at the track, at the wall, it's gone, which I've heard a lot of people do since then. And maybe somebody did that before me and I heard it and liked it, and then I kind of adopted it. I don't know, but that's just kind of what I got to a little bit sometimes, but not all the time.
Yeah, because of you, I never wanted to be the imposter either. However, at the track, at the wall, that I always was my fallback. And I guess that was from all those years of being in the booth with you and watching you and listening to you so intently. That is the one that kind of stuck with me. But what I always loved and noticed, and it's even apparent right now just talking, is your love for the game and how you would pay homage to great calls. You did it for your dad. We'll see you tomorrow night. We'll see you later on today. When the Giants won the pennant, You know, you said the Giants win the pennant. Were those like predetermined, or they just came to you in the moment?
Yeah, well, those two specific examples, the "we'll see you later tonight," I think, and then I had said the "we'll see you tomorrow night" or variations on that. I said it that year in 2002, the year he died.
Right.
When the Angels and Giants went into it, were then setting up a Game 7. So I said it then. I said it, "we'll see you later tonight" with Red Sox and Yankees in that crazy 04 ALCS. And then I said it for the freeze home run. And the reason I said it for the freeze home run was because it was, and I only became aware of this a few years ago, rewatching the game on MLB Network earlier in the game. That was our Aflac trivia question, or whatever the trivia, whoever sponsored the trivia question in 2011.
Yeah.
That was the question. Like, who hit the home run that forced a Game 7 20 years ago last night? And that was an easy one. I never know. I'm terrible at that stuff. But and then Tim was there. He's like, "And your dad said that famous line, 'We'll see you tomorrow night.'" And so it was in my head. And that's the only reason why it came out. Because here we are, Game 6, 20 years ago, almost to the day. And so it was bouncing around in my head. That's the only reason why it came out. I never knew why until I saw the replay of the game. And then the Giants winning the pennant on the Travis Ishikawa home run. That just probably dawned on me when that was bottom of the 9th or bottom of the 10th or whatever it was. It was a walk-off situation. And it was like, I mean, that's one of the famous calls in the history of baseball. So why not? I mean, they were the New York Giants then. So I'll just do a San Francisco Giants version now.
It was awesome. Again, I'm a baseball junkie. So when I heard it, I actually remember emailing you like, that was awesome. Like the Giants.
Well, you're one of about 9 people outside of old Giants fans that even recognize that. But I don't like being a cover band announcer where I'm just doing everybody else's calls. But I think sometimes it's kind of cool to give a nod to history. And I don't, it's not my number one objective, but if it fits, then why not?
Yeah. 9/11, your dad, when baseball resumed, your dad made a speech in front of everyone at Busch Stadium. What were your emotions that night?
Well, he was at the kind of the point in his life, exactly a year before he died, but close, less than a year and a half. And he was just at that time in his life when I think he knew the end was near, and I think he was writing more and more poetry, and he was watching more World War II documentaries. I think when you're in a war like that and you get wounded and you're in Paris when the war comes to an end and you hear Charles de Gaulle speak, probably has the biggest impact on you. I know it did with my dad. And so I just started noticing things. And one of the things he was doing was writing a lot of poetry, or whether it was about he and my mom, or the game of baseball, or my daughters, or whatever it was. And if he got the urge, he would write it. So when that happened, 9/11, he wrote this poem, and we come back, and it's hard to even believe this, but I remember driving downtown to Busch Stadium feeling vulnerable, like, man, if they can knock down the Twin Towers, we're all going to be sitting in a stadium and there's going to be 35,000 people in this thing. You know, maybe we're in danger. You know, that just was kind of front of everybody's minds at that time. And he wrote that poem, and either he told somebody with the Cardinals, or they said, "Hey, why don't you go down there and say it into the microphone, because it feels weird to be back." And it was kind of like my dad giving his blessing that it was okay to continue on with the national pastime, and it was okay to get back to life as we knew it prior to the Twin Towers coming down. So he did it, and he was at his sickest. I mean, he had Parkinson's, he had all this other stuff going on, and I was very protective of him at that point in his life. I was always trying to find ways for him to cut corners or sneak him out at Busch Stadium so that people weren't asking him for his autograph all night, because it took him a while to sign, but he didn't want to miss anybody. So anyway, he came, he's like, I'm going to go down and read this poem before the game tonight. And I said, Dad, because he was very emotional. And I said, Dad, you're going to cry and it's going to be hard. And he goes, I will not cry. I said, you're going to cry. And he put his finger in my face and he said, I will not cry. And I said, okay. I said, I'll bet you. He goes, I'll bet you $100 I don't cry. So he went down there, he did his poem, and I was crying in the booth watching him. He did not cry. And he came back up to the booth after. I was doing it on TV. He was doing it on radio. And he stuck his hand out like, where's my $100? I just slapped his hand like, hey, high five, way to go. And he gave me a smile and off he went back to the radio booth. So, you know, I was proud. I was proud of him for so many things in his life, many things that predated my existence on this earth. Him being a Purple Heart recipient was right at the top of the list. And he wore his emotion on his sleeve for that stuff, and rightly so. And so I said to him, and he got, I don't know, he got a letter from the president. He got, you know, Bud Selig called him. They ran it on Sports Center. And I said, you know, of all the things you've done in your life, all the cool stuff, and then going through what you went through, kind of all culminated in this, you know, that you kind of gave the blessing to go back to baseball, and it resonated with a lot of people. So it was a special night, and I'm really glad he did it. I'm glad he did not take my advice and not do it.
I can remember in that 2006 World Series at Busch Stadium, and it was a new Busch Stadium by that point. We were leaving the booth, and there were people. We kind of snuck around one door to go to the elevator. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but there were two women who were fans, and they had made a poster of you and Tim McCarver. And they were standing by the other door of the media room to get you to sign it. And you had gone in the elevator, you saw them, and you're like, hang on. And you walked out of the elevator, you walked through the two doors, and you went up to them and you signed the poster for them. And when you came back, the person doing the elevator said, your dad would be really proud.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember being in the elevator watching this whole thing. Like, I don't know how much you are aware of it, but I'd watch like all these different things that you would do. And when that person said that to you, I just thought to myself, wow, like that was really neat to see. And it just showed the type of person that you are and how well of a job your parents did raising you. And it sounds like you got that from your dad. As you said, he wanted to sign all those autographs. It's really neat.
Yeah, he was tireless, and he was much better at that stuff than I am. I've kind of figured out over time that I'm more of an introvert than I am an extrovert. And my dad was the opposite. My dad wanted, if there was, somebody told me that they were in a restaurant here in St. Louis at an off hour, and the place was wide open. This guy was sitting at the bar. My dad walked in to have a late lunch, and he could have sat anywhere in the entire restaurant, and he went up and sat in the chair next to the guy and started asking him about his life and whatever. And I would have been in the corner of the restaurant. It just, but in those cases, like if somebody bothered to do something like that, I was going to certainly acknowledge it. And, you know, that stuff is way more important, how you interact with other people, than calling home runs and touchdowns. That I know. And so I'm glad you were watching me, because I was certainly watching him. So you're getting that, you know, really from him, because I think treating people the right way, it's one of the easiest things to do. And so many people, you know, they get caught up in what they're doing, or they put their blinders on, or they don't remember where they come from. I'm the luckiest person ever to do this stuff. I got ushered right in, and you know, my dad didn't. He worked his way up from zero to become the Cardinals announcer and the World Series announcer on radio and the World Series announcer on TV, and did a Super Bowl on TV and numerous Super Bowls on the radio. So he really earned all these spots. I just took advantage of it and worked hard. I'm not saying I didn't, and I'm not saying that I can't handle it. I just know that I wasn't picked out of a crowd of billions to come in and do this. I had legs up to get the chance. And so if he could do it, And if he could do it when he was at his sickest, then how dare I not do it? That's horrible if I intentionally miss something like that. So I don't know. It's a weird way to kind of one by one pay tribute to people that are nice. I mean, I interact, as you see, with people on Twitter that are giving me trouble and you suck and you hate my team and all that other stuff, which is never the case. At least the hating the team part, it's ridiculous. But when people are nice and they do something like that, you better bet I'll go over there and thank them for it.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing when people ask me about my interactions with you, and I say, I think Joe is the best television play-by-play announcer that I've ever seen. And I said, but as good as he is, he's a better person. And I have to apologize to you because I've never had the chance to truly do it. In 2006, I made a huge mistake. And thinking about it right now, I still get a pit in my stomach and I still get teary-eyed. But it was during the LCS and it was at Shea Stadium. And I remember going into the booth from the official stats spot, giving you a note saying, if this goes to a 7th game, it'll be the 3rd NLCS to go 7 games. Because in my head, I thought Albert Pujols the year before had hit the home run to force a game 7, but that only forced a game 6. And I gave you the wrong info and you used it on the air. Tim McCarver quickly was like, no, that's not right. And I figured it out after I handed it to you, but couldn't tell you in time. And so you said that on the air and people blamed you, obviously not blaming me. You walked out of the booth that night and I was like, I'm so sorry. And you just kind of looked at me and I got yelled at by our producer and I deserved to get yelled at. I didn't know what to say to you. I didn't know what to do. And the next day in the New York Daily News, they had written about it, saying how you made that mistake. And we were at the airport flying, and it was Dave Course and Wayne Fiddleman looking at the paper, and they saw it, and I'm like, I'm going to throw up. But despite me making that mistake, like, you forgave me, and you've gone out of your way to help me throughout my career. And I just, honestly, I want to say I'm sorry. That was a mistake. Physical mistakes happen. Mental mistakes can't happen. Mental mistakes are a lack of preparation, and I didn't fact check. And you trusted me enough to use my info, and I let you down. And I still hate it to this day. I'm so sorry about it. Obviously, your career worked out okay. They didn't crucify you, but
I mean, yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I can tell you that if it bothered me in the moment, because you want to be as perfect as you can be, it doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. None of it matters. And you do your best. You did your best. You made a mistake. I do my best every time I go on the air. I make countless mistakes. Not everything that comes out of my mouth is something that I'm proud of. Not every note I have is right. And we live in a world that's more gotcha than pat you on the back. And if the Daily News wrote about it, it doesn't matter. And it just, none of that stuff. I feel like if there's anything that I'm better at now than I was back when I started, it's dealing with that stuff. It's not important. I think an honest mistake, first of all, if Tim corrected it, then the right bit of information eventually got on the air, and it doesn't, just stupid stuff. So, I had that same thing happen to me a couple times. I had that happen when I was in your position to my dad. He was broadcasting the NFC Championship game, and I was his spotter, and I gave him the wrong receiver one time, and he had to correct himself, which was correcting me on the air when I was doing that. And he was doing radio. I was doing his spotting. Secondly, that same thing happened to me with Brooks Koepka and getting the wrong name of his wrong girlfriend. And that was on a note card from a guy who helped me countless times during that week of the US Open, making me appear way smarter than I actually am, or way more well-read, or way more well-versed in the PGA Tour than I otherwise would have been. And he handed me a card with the wrong name on there. I read the card and then faxed and corrected and said, no, that's his new girlfriend, Jenna Sims. And I felt I was sick about, because we've been just taking punch after punch on Fox Golf. And it was like the last thing we had on the air before we said goodbye, and we'd been on for 5 days and all day. It was a lot of work, and it was like, oh my God, I just let everybody down by that stupid, embarrassing moment. And you feel like the world's talking about it, and really nobody cares. But if I'm going to take other notes from you, and I'm going to trust you before that and after that, mistakes happen. And the desire and the belief that you're going to be perfect every broadcast it's impossible. You're never going to be perfect. Something's going to go wrong. You're going to give bad information. You're going to call something the wrong way. Let it go. I haven't thought about it. I didn't even remember it. I don't remember the daily news. I don't remember any of that. So to think you're hanging on to it, and I'm the one that said it, and I don't remember any of it, I think it's probably time for you to let it go.
Well, I'm glad I had the opportunity to finally apologize for it, which was almost 20 years ago. And what's crazy is we've spoken for over an hour, have not even talked about football in the relationship that you and Troy Aikman have. The fact that you're now calling Monday night, I just think about you having so many years with Tim McCarver as your baseball analyst, and now so many years with Troy Aikman as your football analyst. And oh, by the way, you both are in the Football Hall of Fame. Like, what has that relationship been like growing together in the booth?
Well, I think you have to put, as I did, it was a little different with Tim, because Tim, I'd known since I was a little boy. Tim worked with my dad. Tim was, a generation older than me. Troy's different because he's my age, basically. He's a few years older than me. He had 2 girls. I have 2 girls. We just kind of grew up, in our 30s and 40s together. And I am as close with him off the air as I am on. I think you have to almost treat it like a marriage. You have to put time into it. You have to put effort. You have to listen. You have to be aware of how the other person's feeling. I think that works both ways. And I can't say that we're always perfect. I can't, but we've never had, knock on wood, any knockdown, drag out fights. And we've done 6 Super Bowls, and we did 20, whatever it is, NFC champ games, and, a bunch of playoff games. And it's high pressure stuff in our world, but he knows I've got his back, and vice versa. And I think just time has given us a lot of common experiences that we draw on, a lot of jokes that date back to 15, 20 years ago that probably are not as funny as we think they are. But it's like a good marriage that way, that we, I think, both put an effort into it to get along and respect each other. And I think that comes out on the air. Could be wrong, but I feel like people hear that and they trust it. And that's a good thing.
Does it ever feel like work when you're with them?
No, I mean, I don't feel like broadcasting games is work at all, whether I'm doing it with Troy or Tim or Smoltz or Brian Baldinger or anybody else that I've worked with, or Mike Shannon, my dad. It's a great way to make a living. It's fun. It better be fun. I mean, there are a lot of people that are doing jobs that are not having a whole lot of fun. And I'm smart enough to realize that this is a great way to make a living. And I love it every time I go into the booth. I get tired sometimes doing the prep, but knowing that Mike Tirico is working his ass off, and knowing that Jim Nance is doing the same, and Al's doing it, and Kevin's doing it, and, Joe Davis is doing it, and whatever, keeps me going and keeps me working. So that's kind of how I look at it. Like, everybody gets tired, but you can't give in to that, and put the work in, get the benefit of that work, which allows me to be as relaxed and confident and as comfortable as I can be, and let my personality come through. And hopefully that's good enough. And when it's not, then ESPN or whatever network I'm working for will tap me on the shoulder, and I'll be happy that I've done exactly 1 million times more than I ever thought I would. So it's all kind of house money at this point.
All right. Well, with that said, I like to end every podcast with a segment I call This Just In, and it's rapid fire questions. So first thing that comes to your mind, we'll go with favorite World Series you ever called.
01 after 9/11, President Bush throwing out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium, Game 3. I just, with all the emotion being in the Bronx, and it just 7 games, walk-off hit, and everything else that was going on. I mean, that's the one that when you say it, I could go to my first in 96 or the 2011 one with the See You Tomorrow Night and all that, but I think 2001 kind of takes that award.
Yeah. Game you think about the most when you're falling asleep at night, you can't fall asleep, the game that you think about.
Probably my golf game earlier that day, or my kids' coach pitch baseball game. If I start thinking about games that I called, I don't know, whatever's most recent. I don't really go back and go, oh my God, let's think about 1996 Charlie Hayes making the catch in foul territory. Now the Yankees are world champs. And I know I'm not doing rapid fire, but I just kind of do it and move on. I don't, a lot of people latch on to these games and they remember every detail. I just really kind of don't. I remember being there. I don't remember a lot of the specifics. And I think that's the best way to do it. I don't clutter my brain with a lot of that stuff.
By the way, you just referenced my favorite moment in my life. I was at that game, Game 6, when Charlie Hayes made the catch, and it was a total surprise. It was the first World Series of my lifetime when the Yankees had won, and I got to go to that game. So I have said that is the best day of my life. So nice job mentioning that.
Yeah, it was a pretty darn good day in my life. Getting through my first World Series and not making too many dumb mistakes. That was probably the best feeling of accomplishment I've ever had.
What's the most nervous you've ever been before a broadcast?
That easily, Game 1 of 1996. I mean, you could go Super Bowls and all that, but I think once I had done that and I'd gotten through 96, 98, 2000 through 2000, whatever, 21, and you've proven to yourself that you can do it, you haven't done it until you have. I'm not to be, Yogi Berra about it, but that's true. I mean, you go, yeah, sure, I can do a World Series, but until you do it, till you sit there and, you're taking the country through that, it's only a guess. And so, being as young as I was, being as raw and as kind of unbattle tested as I was, that was easily, and it's in the Bronx. I mean, if it had been in St. Louis or Pittsburgh or Seattle or whatever, it would have been different, but it wasn't. It was in New York.
Favorite golf course you've ever played?
Probably Cypress, I think, just because it's got 6 holes of forest, 6 holes of dunes, and 6 holes of ocean. That or Pine Valley, I think, are my top 2. And I've played a lot, and I've been lucky enough to get on the best of the best, but those are the 2 that stand out to me.
How about your career low?
1 under still. I cannot beat 1 under at El Dorado in Cabo. I was playing with Hank Haney.
Sweet.
And he gave me the fatal kiss of death, which I blocked out. He's like, "Hey, bud, do you know what you're shooting here?" And I was like, "Don't say it. Don't say it." It's like all I had to do was par 18, and I was going to be under par. He's like, "Don't." And of course he said it, but I parred 18 and I got in under par. I've got the golf ball somewhere in here. It's right here. It's right over my left shoulder.
Really?
I made Hank sign it.
That's awesome. Best memory in the booth with your dad?
Man, I probably that poem and sharing that moment with him in the back of the booth before he went to do radio and I went to do TV. I mean, I had so many growing up that, I missed them all. But I think as far as a poignant moment, it would be that, hands down. But I mean, I grew up in the booth. my daughters grew up in that booth. You can pick out any family moment you want, but I think as far as he and I, that would be it.
Who was your favorite player growing up?
I mean, I loved Lou Brock. I loved Ozzy, but I was a teenager by that point. I like the guys that paid attention to me when I was a little fat bat boy running around, and they'd play catch with me. Rooster Raider was a guy that I'd play catch out in front of the dugout before games.
Wow.
As the bat boy. And I'm playing catch with a big leaguer before he ran out there and I was a little boy. Or Tony Scott was a sweetheart, played for the Cardinals, late 70s, early 80s, George Hendrick, Dave LaPointe, like guys that when I was in my kind of 12, 13, 14 years, bothered to like say hi and sit down and talk to me. And Dave LaPointe, who was kind of a, let's say, bigger, fuller-bodied pitcher, I think took to me because I was a bigger, fuller-bodied bat boy. And he used to kind of come up to me and kind of hit me. And one time he just hit me a little harder and it caught me on my arm, and it just got me. And I think a tear started to roll down my cheek. And I think he thought, oh God, I just hit Jack Buck's kid. Jack Buck's gonna, whatever. And he like basically took me by the hand, and my daddy's like, I hit him. I didn't mean to hit him that hard. I'm like, Dad, I'm fine. But yeah, he was awesome. He was a New Yorker and funny as hell. And those guys that were personality and then bothered to pay attention to a bat boy were my favorites.
Yeah, that's why I had to ask, because I knew it would be different than most people. Like, you have a relationship. All right, best athlete you've ever seen in all the sports that you've done.
I mean, sports that I've done, Jim Edmonds, I think, is the best athlete. Not just being a great center fielder, being really having a keen eye, being I saw him one time during a rain delay in spring training. I was in the clubhouse, and Edgar Renteria had a soccer ball, and Edmonds was like set up a goal, and Renteria was taking shots on him just to kill time, and he was diving all over the place. I think that catch that he made with the Angels, laid out, straightaway center field with his back to the plate, is the greatest catch I've ever seen. I mean, the Mays catch is right there too, but I just think, all things considered, the athleticism, I think he's one of the great hand-eye athletes that I ever covered. I saw him a lot, so clutch, I'd say Ortiz or Jeter, but as far as pure athlete, I think it's Edmonds.
All right, I love it. And it would not be fair for me to talk to you and not at least say to the fans and the people watching how I actually got the chance to meet you. And it was because of Tim McCarver. And I don't know if you know this or not, but so it was 2000 that summer. I interned for MSG Network, and Tim McCarver and Bobby Mercer were doing the local Fox 5 games. And when I finished, I thanked them. And he said, well, where are you going? And I said, I'm going back to school. He goes, well, we still have, a third of the season left. And I said, I still have 2 years of college left. So unless you want to give me a job, I have to go. And he said, do you want to work with us when we're in Boston? I said, sure. He goes, how about the national game? I go, yeah, I'd love to. He goes, call me at the hotel. I'll set it up. So I called him. He called Derek Manning. Next thing you know, I'm helping out Steve Horn that day, Yankees, Red Sox, September. And then I help for the playoffs. I come back for the World Series. That's how it all started. But the funny part is that, this, he forgot my name.
Hey, Jordan. What do you call you, Jordan?
Hey, Josh. Hey, Jason.
God. Yeah, Jason.
And
anything but Justin.
Yes, but it began with a J. And I picked you up at the hotel in Boston, and we're driving to the stadium, to the ballpark. And I said, by the way, Tim has no idea what my name is. And you said, what are you talking about? Of course he does. I go, he has no idea what my name is. So as we're in the booth, you guys are down below, and he goes, hey, Josh. And I look over and I was like, yeah, Tim. And I see you writing, his name is, and Tim's like, I know his name. And you write Justin. And he goes,
Oh my
And then he
God.
goes, "Hey, Justin." And I said, "Yeah, Tim." And he starts like his chuckle. And it was because of you that he figured out what my name was.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I love that guy, and he's the same guy. We did not have any fights. We didn't have any BS that went on, and I felt like I took care of him, and he took care of me. As I said, certainly at the beginning of my career, just kind of filling in the gaps and treating me as an equal when I wasn't worthy of it, and I tried to protect him at times as the older he got, and tried to keep him, having fun.
Yeah.
And somebody reminded me something the other day on Twitter when uh, Barry Zito got a hit, and the crowd in San Francisco at Pac Bell or what I don't
Right.
even know, AT&T, whatever
Yeah.
the
I
name,
don't know what it is now either.
no idea. They started chanting Barry, 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 and I said during a World Series or playoff game, well, they're used to chanting that name in this stadium. And he goes, Manilow? And I said, Manilow? I said, Bonds, not Barry Manilow. And then he did what you're doing right now. But I mean, we had so much fun. And, I'm glad that he followed up and made sure you were on our crew because you were always one of the good ones. And I'm glad that, we got to know you. I got to know you. And again, like I said at the beginning, I'm proud of all that you've done and really thankful that we did this today, even though you gave
Yeah.
me that shitty note back in 06 or whatever.
Me too, Joe. I could obviously talk to you for a long time, but I don't want to take up any more of your time. I really appreciate you doing this. You've meant so much to me throughout my career, throughout my life, and this means a lot. Thank you, and I can't wait to see you again sometime soon. Maybe actually, finally on the golf course.
Yeah, I stink right now, so you want me on that golf course? You can dive right into my wallet.
Awesome, Joe. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.
All right, thanks.